We got the NBA to cover. We got one last topic in the NBA. Obviously, the playoffs are around the corner. I am locked into the NBA right now, and I'm ready to hit over there. I'm ready to talk about which team in the playing game currently, right now, currently standing, could be the biggest threat in the East and in the Western Conference as well. So, Zay, if you want to begin, we can start off in the Eastern Conference. Who do
Okay.
you think is the biggest threat if they're able to come out of the playing game?
Let me just make sure I get the latest NBA standings real quick, so I know
I'm
who's
gonna
in the
pull that
East.
up on
I know
myself
things have
too.
changed. All right, so right now, currently, I'll just say as you look up that list, right now we have the Atlanta Hawks, 7, Orlando Magic's 8th, Chicago Bulls 9, and the Miami Heat at 10. That is the plan right now, is currently standing. And I look at the Orlando Magics as a very difficult team to combat against. I was a huge fan of my Orlando Magics going into the season. I thought they was going to make waves. I understand they had a lot of injuries and lost a lot of players throughout the season. And I know Paulo coming back has still been a struggle to him for him finding his footing and coming back playing full strength. But I think Orlando they are really well coached, and I think they're very feisty. And I think in a 7-game series they're going to be very combative. I think they are currently a big threat in the Eastern Conference to make a NBA Finals from the as a play-in team, from the play-in selection out of the 4 teams. I understand. We look at Miami, we look at Chicago, we look at Atlanta, and they have more talent, more perimeter shooting on that team. I just don't think they have the same grit as Orlando right now, especially Miami. They have a 9-game losing streak at the moment. So it's interesting what's going on for the Eastern Conference. But I think Orlando Magic for me is the team I would look at and say they are threats in the Eastern Conference. Do you want to
Yeah,
go Western Conference like back to back, or you want to?
yeah. We could.
Well, here's what I
I
have.
get it.
Here's what I have to say first. At the same time, it's got to come down to either the Orlando Magic or the Atlanta Hawks. The Orlando Hawks have kind of flown under the radar a little bit. They still have Trey Young, and there's also the fact that they have swept the Hornets over the course of the season, including the last game they played against each other, where Trey Young scored 31 points, and it was a 134 to 102 win. So we do have to take that into consideration. But it's going to come down to either the Atlanta Hawks or the Orlando Magic as far as the Eastern Conference goes. Damn sure ain't going to be the Heat.
I mean, look. I think what makes the Hawks dangerous a little bit, just starting off with them a little bit, is the fact that in a playing situation, you never want to see Trey Young in a playing game because he
Mm.
can take over the game and put up 40, and that's dangerous. We saw that a couple years ago when they went on that run, how dangerous they could be. And I think they won another playing situation as well. So they have a lot of experience in the playing game. So I think off the fact of that alone, they would be dangerous. But I agree with Zay. I'm going to go with the Magic here. And I think if they wasn't ravaged by injuries, they would have a better seating right now where they wouldn't need the playing game to obviously get into the playoffs. But I think that game against the Cavaliers, I always want to go back to that game because I thought that game, them winning that game was something that could build upon confidence for them going forward in a potential another meeting against the Cavs if they would have aligned that way. Last year in the playoffs, they lost all four road games against the Cavaliers, and the fact that they was able to go into their building, a team that was on a streak, right, a winning streak, desperately wanted to keep that streak alive, and flat out Paulo Ben Carroll and Fred Wagner just outdueled Darius Garland and Mitchell, right? And I
Mm.
think for me, Anthony Black is going to be the X factor for this team with his aggressiveness and his energy on both sides of the ball. I think KCP, could get you some valuable veteran experience, having won 2 championships already in the playoffs. Obviously, can knock down a 3-point shot and defend at a pretty high level. And also, I think that just the if they can shoot more threes and make more threes, then it will make things a lot easier. But I saw what they can be defensively when they put the effort out there on the floor and they force you to play a different brand of offense, which they did with the Cavaliers in that game on Sunday. So I think for me, I have to go to Magic here, but I think the Hawks is just dangerous because of Trey Young and how he could take over a playing game and us seeing them do it before as well.
For sure. 100%.
Let's go to the
Completely
Western
agree.
Conference. Zay, you
Okay.
want to add something to that, or we ready to go to the Western
No, I
Conference?
think the Hawks are a really good team. I just think the loss of Jalen Johnson was a huge blow. I think that was a pivotal player in my opinion. Jalen Johnson was playing out of his complete mind at a point where the Hawks were looking like a top 6 team in the Eastern Conference, and we'll be talking about them outside of the Pistons if Jalen Johnson never got hurt. I think the Hawks found something. They found that second guy. He is a very I think he's a more of a complete player to John Jonathan Kuminga, but with a jump shot. He is that type of player, and he brings a different dynamic to the Hawks that they were missing for a very long time. He's the guy they expected DeAndre Hunter to be, and that's what they're gaining. And then you got the Dyson Daniels. There's a lot of pivotal players on that team that the Hawks can allow Trae Young to be who he is, which is a natural scorer and facilitator. And I think when you got those young guys flying around the whole court defending at that level, the Hawks are extremely pivotal. I just think now with the loss of Jalen Johnson, they're still a strong team to go against. It's just not as dangerous as when that Jalen Johnson and Dyson Daniels tandem was on the court at the same time.
What about the Heat? Because you have some championship DNA still left over. You have a obviously one of the best coaches in the NBA. I think Bam Adebayo, if he's aggressive and he's taking at least 20 shots per game,
Mm-hmm.
they could be dangerous. Tyler Hero, obviously shooting the
Mm-hmm.
basketball. What do you think about the Heat? How dangerous can they be in a playing setting and scenario?
Well, the thing is, they already shown us that never count them out a couple years ago. The issue is who's going to be the backbone this year. Is Tyler Hero going to be the leader of this locker room and try to carry them? Bam Adebayo, it's Terry Rozier. It's tough, especially when you got Eric Spoelstra as a coach. You never count him out. Eric Spoelstra, he is literally the godfather of getting undrafted players paid because he's brought nothing but undrafted players on that roster and turned them into role players, pivotal role players in the playoff games, series just like this. These want-to-go home games, these series against the top echelon teams in the Eastern Conference. So you can never count on Miami Heat due to the fact they've shown us not once but twice already that they can make it to they can make an NBA Finals push and get hot at the right time. Because I don't know if you all remember when Miami Heat was in that play-in series that year they went to the finals. They lost their play-in game at home. They went on a road and to win that, and it's a little daunting because they had to do a lot to get to the place where they got to that time, and it was just all grit, all grind. Miami could do it again this year if you sleep on them. So, it's possible. You never sleep on Miami. I learned my lesson twice already. One in the bubble, and again when they beat us at home. I mean, against the Knicks. So I think it's, you can't sleep on them.
Problem with Miami, though, they made those finals runs with Jimmy Butler, and all the drama from everything that is going on with Miami this year and how he's going to the Warriors has really been a big distraction for Miami. They're 1-9 in their last 10 games, and I think Jimmy Butler leaving has a lot to do with that. That didn't happen by accident. There is a lot of championship DNA, but I think because of what happened, they're not going anywhere this year because of some of the drama that they've had to go through.
All right, let's go to the Western Conference. Good points. Let's go to the Western Conference right now. Who do we like in the Western Conference? I'll go. I think the Warriors are the. I believe. Let me just make sure because I know I checked last night, but
I think they're
things
six.
fluctuate. Yes, right now they're in the playing. No, they're not in the playing. They 6. Okay, so things.
Yeah,
I'll
right
let
out.
y'all go, and then I'll come up with another team because I had them, but right now they're the 6th seed. So
I
go ahead.
wanted to say the Warriors so bad, but they've been doing so well throughout, the past few games they've had, and the addition of Jimmy Butler has been an absolute godsend for them. He's been a great voice to have in that locker room. He's taken some of the load off Steph Curry that I understand because I wanted to say the Warriors as well. But I also feel the same way. And again, this is another team that's flown under the radar. What about the Minnesota Timberwolves and the addition of Julius Randle? Anthony Edwards is averaging almost 28 points a game. Julius Randle, I believe, is averaging about 19 points a game, right where about his numbers line up. And I feel like it's been a welcome addition for Minnesota. Karl Anthony Towns, losing him is absolutely a net negative, but I feel like the Minnesota Timberwolves have been able to make up for it. And I feel like Anthony Edwards is only going to grow as a player, being the fact that he's so young. They were in the Western Conference Finals last year. And I do think that this is going to be, a year where they could make another run. I think Anthony Edwards is that kind of in your face competitor. He wanted to guard Kyrie in the finals last year. And, I don't think the Minnesota Timberwolves are a team to be underestimated. I think what they've managed to build over the past few years, I think, is something that you want to look at and something that you want to pay attention to for years to come. You want to see what they're going to do and you want to see what they're going to do next. I think this is a team that could absolutely 100% surprise us again and make a run.
Yeah, I think that's a good team. I think that's a good team. I think for me, when I look at the NBA standings right now, you look at the four teams actually it's like a bunch of teams basically all bunching together. You got the Clippers, you got the Warriors, basically a game apart. You got the Timberwolves, Kings, Suns, and Mavericks tied for 10th. So, in my opinion, I think when you look at the most dangerous team, and I think everybody has overlooked this team completely, is the Los Angeles Clippers. I think this team is absolutely phenomenal, especially when Kawhi Leonard is playing at the level that he's playing at. No nonsense. He's on the court. He's not injured. He's playing fully healthy, and that's when he's at his scariest. When he's playing fully healthy and he has something to prove, he's playing on the court. When there's no more people to point at, no more fingers to point at in terms of why they're failing. It's all Kawhi Leonard. He's been showing out this season. They're on both sides of the floor, defensively and offensively. I believe he has a game winner this year as well. That's a dangerous team. Let's say they take that 7th seed and they play against the Houston Rockets. Do we think the Houston Rockets have enough to beat that Clippers team? I'm not too sure. I'm not 100% confident the Clippers team, even though they're well coached, they have a great young nucleus and a lot of great defenders and good scorers. I don't know if they're consistent enough for me to say they could beat the Clippers in 7 games. I think the Clippers are a scary team. Ty Lue being the head coach, he's been there before. He has championship pedigree. Kawhi Leonard, another guy who has championship pedigree. You got James Harden, who's who he is in the playoffs, but he's still a dynamic scorer on that court. And you got a bunch of players around the Clippers who just know their jobs, know their roles, and know what they need to do, especially Norman Powell playing out of his damn mind this entire season. So I think
Those
when
are
you look at
all
them, they're a team that could put a dangerous push and move forward in that Western Conference to rather take somebody's dreams or make their own dreams come true and make it to the NBA Finals.
Those
I
are
agree
all
with.
great points. Those are all great points. But can we trust that Kawhi Leonard is going to stay on the basketball court? Because we haven't been able to trust that in the past. And as you get older, you're not going to get injured less. We've seen it with Joel Embiid on the 76ers. That's one example. I think he might be the only one who it's you're able to argue it between the two of them, but he might be more injury prone than Joel Embiid. And I just feel like we can't trust that Kawhi Leonard is going to stay on the floor. So while I love the points, like you said, Mike Tomlin has been dealing with a bad hand for the last 5, 6 years. You can make the argument that Ty Lue hasn't been dealing with the greatest hand that he could have had because of Kawhi Leonard's injuries. To your point, James Harden has had a fantastic year himself and has been able to shut a lot of the haters up due to the fact that he's forced his way off of several teams: Philly, Brooklyn, Houston, who we just brought up. And I think that is going to go a long way to being able to get out of the play in and possibly being a threat in the NBA playoffs. But Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle are guys that are known for being on the court the entire time. So while I don't think that they're the caliber of player yet that Kawhi Leonard is, can we trust that Kawhi Leonard is going to stay on the court? And I'm not sure that we can.
I mean, look, availability is the best ability. I agree with that, but I do think the Clippers are a little bit sneaky, being that Bogdanovich has been cooking lately, being that Kawhi Leonard has shown us that he's still one of those dudes when on the floor, and being that James Harden could have one of those retro games. Yeah, sure, the disappearing act begins in game 5, 6, and 7, but he could have one of those retro games where he could take over a game offensively with his playmaking. Zubac is one of the most underrated bigs in the game. We saw what he's been able to do consistently on night to night, and what he did recently against the Cavs, having like 20 boards. So rebounds is key in the playoffs. Second chance opportunities are key in the playoffs. And I understand that because he's small, that he doesn't get the recognition of some of these other centers in the game, but he's been consistent. He's been the model of consistency. So I agree partially there with Zay. I think because the Warriors are right there, even though they're the sixth right now, they still could be in this conversation. And I think I would lean more towards them because obviously, since the arrival of Jimmy Butler, this team has looked completely different. And it's the confidence that he's been able to give, the young guys, starting with his own abilities, his defensive intelligence, his ability to create advantages in isolation that allows guys to get open. And, these young guys like Mooney, and even Pod recently had a game where he scored 17 points. He was knocking down triples. So the supporting cast immediately, I just see the confidence there since the Jimmy Butler trade. And like I said before, he was the Heat culture. He was the Heat
Yes,
culture
you did.
along with Eric Spo. Now he's bringing that along with what the Warriors have already, built, and the equity they built and the culture they built over there. He's just adding on to that. So he just modifies the championship DNA of that team. And then you can't count out Steve Kerr. I
Right.
understand he gets flack sometimes, but he's still one of the best coaches in the NBA. So to me, it really depends on the matchup. All this comes down to matchups. That's key, is matchups, because I think with the Warriors small ball, they could beat teams like the Lakers, the Rockets, the Grizzlies, right? But if I'm them, I would like to avoid the Nuggets, the Thunder, right? Because Jokic obviously could take over the series. Hartenstein, could do what he does on the board. So it's going to come down to matches, but I prefer the Warriors. I think they're the most dangerous.
So here's what I'm gonna take from that. I like the fact that you said Jimmy Butler is the culture, because it's a point you brought up earlier. The star player is the culture. Kawhi Leonard, you could make an argument, is the culture of the Clippers, and how he doesn't really do much to promote that franchise, and it's tough to get him on the court sometimes. You could also make the argument that Anthony Edwards is setting the culture in Minnesota. So again, like you said, the star player is the culture. So something to keep in mind when these two teams are fighting for their spots to get in the playoffs.
No, it's gonna be good. The playing game in the Western Conference, I'm looking forward to it, and the Eastern Conference as well. I'm looking forward to it. I think this is the one thing that Adam Silver did, the adjustment he made to increase engagement. I think and prevent tanking, right? That was the main cause of it, was to prevent tanking. I think this is the one thing that he did to really solidify a solution to a problem, and it is worked.